and Julia. Wonderful. All right, now seizing the advantage. Today's theme, with the EXO user base, we do like to present what could be in your future, sort of like clairvoyance. You know, we see another ERP eventually. You saw Valantis speak a lot about taking the transition from EXO business through to MYOB Advanced potentially. Seizing that, you also heard in there, and with Simone, the reasons why, the losses of any systems that aren't actually as effective as they could be. And we wouldn't like to suggest that any EXO out there is left behind and should be getting the treatment, because it's always possible, as you can see with Murray and Brent and TJ, what they show us. So it's a great pleasure. We will introduce you here to be seizing the advantage. Take a look at how MYOB Advanced does this for businesses. Nick Savage, matey, always a great pleasure to bring you in and just give us an insight into, as I say, what may be in the future for our
youth. Thanks very much for that, Grant. Thanks for the introduction. I'm going to be actually explaining in terms of MYOB Advanced. I'm going to be going through how it can work potentially for your business. And one of the key elements I'm going to show today is to do with the finance module, because really it's the underlying structure within MYOB Advanced. And 6 months ago, I showed like the distribution elements. So really, I want to show the financial side of things. And the reason I want to show that is because from a perspective of MYOB Advanced, the finance area is probably one of its key strengths. And for any type of business, whether it's a small distribution all the way through to a not-for-profit or a government organization, it can handle that level of structure quite easily. So from a finance point of view, I'm going to cover off today the entity and GL structure. I'm going to look at the ledgers and budgets, show you in terms of allocations and deferrals, some of the features that are quite useful for a bigger or even smaller organization. And then I'm going to explain about some of the reporting methods, so the tools that are within the system and outside of the system as well. And then I'm going to talk about automation, because really automation is, again, one of the key elements in terms of MYOB Advanced that kind of drives those efficiencies, more like a set and forget type element. So to start off with, from the structural point of view, MYOB Advanced allows you to log in from any device at any time, as long as you've got an internet browser. And it allows you to actually log into multiple companies in the same tenant. So Julia mentioned about this previously. MYOB Advanced does have the ability under a tenant to have multiple entities, so GST reporting entities within the single site. And it means that we can have multiple companies, but we can also have multiple branches underneath those companies. Now, the reason that's useful is from a point of view of group reporting. It means that we can compile everything together for a group profit and loss, or for a branch profit and loss, or for a company profit and loss. So we can really kind of get all of those companies and all that information directly within the system. Now, the other elements as well is that you can then share certain things like customers, suppliers, inventory items, and also you can share your general ledger chart of accounts. Now, what we can also do from that perspective is we can actually then choose who gets to see which bits. So whether it's a company level, or whether it's a branch level, or whether it's a user level, you get to actually choose what they get to see. So again, everything is all within one system, rather than having to jump between companies to find out that information. Now, that's kind of like the first layer in terms of the structure within the system. The second layer is obviously your kind of chart of accounts. And your chart of accounts, if I just jump into that very quickly, you can just see that we can have a normal chart of accounts we can share across the companies. We can also have things like multi-currency, so we have a full multi-currency system set up as well. And it means for bank accounts, we can do that sort of things and do revaluations based on that. And from a flow point of view, we can obviously do summarized or detailed transactions coming through from the different modules within the system into this general ledger side of things. Now, when I mentioned about the not-for-profits and government organisations, what they like to actually set up, and what you may deem for your own company as well, is we have what we call a sub-account layer underneath the general ledger. Now that means you can have up to 30 characters, so it can be 2 digits, or it could all the way be up to 30 digits. And you can, in this case, you can see that I've actually set up a 4-level layer. And so I've got my region. So it can be ACT or Queensland. I've also got my cost centers. So it could be, you know, your departments, finance, operations, consulting. You could have a layer for programs and services, so domestic machines, spare parts, things like that. Or I could even just have as simple as just one layer, which was just to show me my salesperson. And then I can track things like budgets against that and work out what's flowing through from this sub-account structure. Now, there is another element in terms of the structure, which is what we call our projects. And projects is really project accounting, and it means that we can actually set up mini profit and losses based on projects. And this can be for things like buildings, for development, for construction companies, all the way through to like CapEx type projects, and also internal projects. But also you can do billing of time and materials, so you can track costs and revenue and then work it out across more than 1 year or, you know, multiple years from that point of view. Now, from the next section, what I was going to mention about is the ledgers. Now, the ledgers we have within the system as well. We have the ability to actually create actual budgets, which is our general ledger transactions, so they all flow through directly into that area. We also have the ability to create budgets, and we can create multiple budgets. And the beauty of the multiple budgets as well is that from the point of view of, if I just jump into here, we can load those budgets into the system, and whether or not we're using this screen here, we can actually load it in, or we can use a thing called Valexo as well. Now, you can also see as well that I'm in 2022 now, but one of the key things in terms of MYOB Advanced is we can actually create years ahead. So the financial calendar allows us to actually open up years ahead for budgeting, but also it means that we're not locked down to, we have to roll a month end to get the next period to kick into play. We can actually just have the financial structure ready, open for next year, and then open the periods as and when we need to. So we can obviously create budgets based on, you know, whichever we want, and then we can compare them. And from this point of view, we can drop out what we're going to actually change and then re-upload for a budget control. And then we've got authorizations to release budgets from that side of things as well. Now, one other element that gets used frequently, not massively, is our statistical ledger. Our statistical ledger allows you to actually capture non-financial information. So it might be things like kilometers, it might be rainfall for agriculture, it might be beds for nursing or things like that. And it really allows you to actually track those elements and report on those elements as well. Now, where that comes into play a little bit more is in regards to our allocations and our deferral side of things. So within the finance, there's certain areas that you can kind of make more efficient. And one of the areas that really gets utilized is our allocations. So allocations actually allow you to reallocate expenses, but also reallocate revenue if needs be. So if I use the example here of reallocate telephone expenses, you can jump into here and you can see that this is a reallocation, and we can say when does it kick off, and it's just open-ended. And you can also see as well what is going to be my distribution method. Is it going to be by percent or by weight, or is it going to be based on a source ledger? You can actually say to it what's going to be our source ledger or even our base ledger to calculate those allocations. Now, I will be covering this in more detail in the MYOB Advanced session, so if you want to stick around for that, by all means. But from this kind of allocation section, you can see I can set up my source account. In this case, this is my telecom expense. I can also bring in my branch and my sub-account layers. And then I can say, once that comes in, so once I get a bill from Telstra, for example, as soon as I assign that account and that sub-account, we can get the system to automate behind the scenes to generate the journal to split it across these different branches based on that weighted percentage. Really, that's one kind of crucial element in terms of the allocation of costs effectively. Now, the other element that we have is our deferrals. We have a deferral module within the system, and on the deferrals, you can actually do things like deferring expenses and deferring revenue. So if I look at my 12-month expenses, this could be actually utilized for if you got rent or rates and you pay, rates and you pay them up front, or insurance. You can actually then split it and evenly divide it across periods, or pro rata it, or actually go through based on flexible days in a period. Now, what you can then do is you set that up and you assign it against a line, and it then means that any bill that comes in that has that deferral code, we can actually automate it. And again, it creates the journal for us and pushes it out for a better, more reflective profit and loss tracking from that side of things. Now, when it comes down to reporting, I mentioned before that we've got that kind of structure, and we've also got all of these different elements as well. And from a reporting point of view, there's kind of like two main reporting tools. The first one is our general ledger report designer. And I'm just going to show, if I jump into my profit and loss New South Wales, the report designer lets you actually build in your rows, your columns, dictate certain formulas based on what you've actually got. And if I just run this report, you can then see that based on the structure that I set up, and it's always a good idea to work this out, how you want to report it, because ultimately the structure and everything comes back down to how you want to report. So from this point of view, you can see that I've got my different branches or my different companies. And from this report as well, I can just simply go in and I can actually click directly into my core stock, for example. And then I can see my sub-account layer. Once that's recorded against transactions, we can then drill directly into there. And I can then see this is the AP module, this is a batch that it relates to, and I can drill directly in again. I can see the journal transaction that's been created, and you can start to see as well, here's my branch, here's my account, and here's my sub-account layer. And also, if it was associated against projects, it would be registered here. Now, the last bit, I can drill back up to the original document, and I can see the bill. So from that reporting, I can just go all the way through and all the way back up to where it originally came from, and even to the point of audit history, see who actually created it. So you've got that kind of full auditability through the system itself. Now, another thing just to point out as well from a profit and loss report is I can then incorporate what's called unit sets. And the unit sets allow me to use those sub-account segments. I'm already looking at my branches and my group totals, but I can look at my departments and actually do a little mini profit and loss for that department. So simply by incorporating that, we can flow that into there. Now, the other thing I was just going to mention from a reporting perspective, that's kind of like the Excel report designer, but we also have a report add-in, which is called Velexo. And Velexo is really for those kind of organizations that heavily use Excel. And Velexo is an add-in that allows you to actually bring live data directly into the system. Now, the beauty of this is that you can see on here, I've got my parameters set up, and you can see that I've got my reporting period, and all of this is actually flowing through live. So my net sales, my total operating expenses. And the way in which Velexo works is that it has its own set of formulas. So the account turnover, you can see in here, we've got connection, ledger, account class, sub-account, from and to. All of this based on when I change that, if I just move it to another period, for example, we can actually then flow it through and it's just updated instantly for us. And you can then start to build some really complex reports, expand your operating expenses. So if you're used to using Excel to build these kind of things, then you can really build the report packs within here. Now, the beauty of this as well is, if we ever want to do any write backs, we can actually generate write backs, and we can go GL write back and import, and it instantly creates a journal within Advance. So the live feed is not only from the data, but you can push things back in. So we can push back in budgets, project budgets, or even GL journal transactions. Now, the last thing I just want to mention in terms of the system is the automation, because this is incredibly powerful. Now, all of the modules have different areas, and they have under there, they have processes. And this is where you can actually automate certain things. So from a managed financial periods point of view, I mentioned about this before. So in here, we can actually automate to open the period on a certain date. You can go in and go add, and we can actually go in and say, right, I want to schedule this every month, and it's going to be the first day of every month, or we can say the first Monday of every month. So we can automate that process so you don't have to remember to do that side of things. And in a similar kind of ilk as well, you could do your receivables, close a period and close it based on the kind of like last day of the month, but close off the AP at different points. Now, from a reporting point of view for automation, if I just jump back to here, you can see on here, print and email settings, I can actually set up who this goes to, what the subject's going to be, and I can save that template, and then I can schedule that template. So again, you can schedule all of your GL reports or all reports within the system, and they automate and send out. And in a similar kind of vein for Valexo, you've also got the distribution tab, and this allows you to actually send out the different reports based on who they're going to, and you can do consolidated reports or individual companies directly from that. So that really kind of concludes a little bit of an overview of MYOB Advanced. And as you can imagine, it is quite a large system. So that just gives you a very brief taster of what's actually in there.